What's up, everyone? So AMD released 21.7.1 the other day, and I've just got some spare time to test it. There's nothing too notable with these drivers. They fixed a few issues, and all of this will be linked in the comments below. A lot of the known issues are still there, which is kind of disappointing to see that they're not, knocking them out one by one. I'm not seeing it. It looks roughly the same as the previous driver notes for known issues, and you'd think they would have fixed some of these recurring issues by now, or found a workaround to give up on it. Basically, like, this game compatibility advisor has just been crap since it released. It's been always throwing random, saying that high specs do not meet requirements. That's stupid. It makes the compatibility advisor useless if it's not giving the right advice. So they should fix that in one driver update. They should fix that. It shouldn't take multiple driver updates, because that means there's thousands of users getting incorrect compatibility advice. And I've seen all the posts on Reddit. That's actually what seems to be happening. And yes, you can just ignore it, but it just makes the driver functionality, the driver software feature, kind of a waste of resources to even maintain if they can't get it right the first time. But anyway, it is what it is. Hopefully they figure something out. Like, either they fix it, they have to have a guy like that they dedicate, fix this up, get it working. Because high-spec systems should not be advising that the CPU is not powerful enough, especially when it's their own CPU. So anyway, enough of that. I'll just show you here. They've still got this memory clock value issue. This has been through multiple driver updates. Some of these just annoy me that they're still there. Like, no one's fixed it. Their driver team can't fix it. So is it a problem with certain GPUs, and it's just like inbuilt into the GPU? It's not getting correct values, or something else? I don't know. But anyway, enough of that. This will be in the notes if you want to read it in the comments down below. And we'll get into the driver testing. So you can see here I've got 21.7.1 installed. As far as the UI goes, nothing's changed. I installed straight over the top. The most noticeable thing is when you go into performance now tuning, you have to click GPU to get your GPU to come up. And that's kind of annoying because it's a GPU driver. So unless you're running like 6 GPUs, which why would you be, you'd expect your GPU to come up straight away anyway. So they've just added an extra click. I don't know. Maybe they're planning to add Ryzen CPUs in here as another button, and that's why there's 2. But even if so, even if that was the case, that there was other buttons to click, it should default to your main, primary GPU. It should just default and have it open. So I hope they fix that up. It is, another beta driver, not certified, but who knows? They might say it's WHQL, like they did with 21.6.1. They moved it to WHQL after 21.6.2 released, even though the Heaven performance wasn't fixed. But anyway, if you don't know about that, I'll just quickly go over with my 6700 XT. I've been testing it since I got the GPU for every driver update, and going back to 21.4.1, going as far back as 21.4.1, we were getting 150 FPS at stock, and then this undervolt here with stock memory is what I was running, as what I've been running for all the driver updates. So this is my 6700 XT, and we were getting 145.2 FPS in Heaven at 1080p Ultra Extreme 8x AA with recording on, with ReLive on, like I'm doing now. And from 21.4.1, every single driver update, even the optional ones, was within margin of error, within 1 to 3 FPS. So 146, 146.5, between 5.1 and 5.2, and then we got to 6.1 and it dropped to 113. So that's like a 30 FPS drop, and it hasn't been fixed in 6.2. I'm hoping 7.1 fixes it, but the main issue I'm seeing is it wasn't in the driver notes. Like, it's not a known issue or a fixed issue. So it's either flown under their radar, or it's something else that's causing it. Maybe a Windows thing, because my Windows is 20 on 2.1H1. There was a Windows update, and I ended up accidentally getting it. But again, most people do try to keep their Windows up to date. So if it is that, I'll have to get a confirmation. I have had other users say that they had the Heaven FPS drop from 5.2 to 6.1 though. So it's not just exclusive to my system. It was another 6700 XT owner. It could be exclusive to the 6000 series, but we'll see. Anyway, I'll have all this in the comments down below as well, so you can look at the previous driver performance. Everything else other than Unigine Heaven has been perfectly fine. So superposition from 5.2 to 6.1 was within margin of error, 67.99 4K optimized, and you can see here 67.67 within a decimal. So, everything's performing as expected. There's no crashing. I actually tried disabling SAM to see if that was a thing, because SAM was only added to switch into the drivers on 6.1, and that didn't make a difference either. But yeah, Metro Exodus benchmark and superposition were within margin of error from the previous 5.2 and 5.1 drivers. So you can take a look at that down in the comments below as well if you're interested. And otherwise, we're just going to run in. I've thrown a few new benchmarks in since 6.2. We've also got Ryzen Zero Dawn and AC Odyssey. I'm not going to be running these like indefinitely, but just until this weird heaven issue is ironed out, I want to see if other benchmarks show performance fluctuating at all as well, just to see if I catch something that might not be getting noticed by others like websites testing. So anyway, so we're up to 7.1 here. This is at the bottom, and I'll just be filling these in as the benchmarks run. I'm going to do them live on video, and you can sit through and watch them if you want, just to see how stable the drivers are with the frame time graph. I'm going to run that too. Or you can just skip. I'll try to put timestamps for all the results. So you can, start at the benchmark, skip to result, and you can just click the timestamps. So yeah, enjoy guys, and thanks for tuning into my channel. Cheers. So yeah, within margin of error of the low performance since 21.6.1 released. So 113, 113, 114. Yeah, within 1 FPS. So I guess they haven't fixed it yet, but not a big deal. I mean, the performance is still very stable. The few stutters that you might have seen during the benchmark run are actually built into the benchmark. It just happens at some point during the benchmark there'll be a stutter. I think it's just the way it loads the textures or the shade. I don't know what it's loading, but it's always been there. So anyway, enough of that. You can just see the results here. We'll punch them in. I might even drop Unigine Heaven altogether because it is a fairly old benchmark, and when we've got Superposition 4K running at the same performance as it always has, it makes me just think that there could be some kind of feature or unused, what would you call it? Unused GPU draw calls, like something that built into the engine that's not really being used in current game title development, so the drivers have kind of dropped support for it, and that is just my theory that why it would suddenly drop 30 FPS in performance when everything else seems to be running fine. It's probably completely off the mark, but a game developer that watches this might be able to chime in and say something, or someone that follows that kind of stuff more closely. But yeah, I might just drop it and stick with Superposition and move on to a more up-to-date suite of benchmarks, like just something, something more modern. So we've got Horizon Zero Dawn and AC Odyssey. Could look into Doom. Just anything else. Basically what the benchmark sites are running. Not many run Heaven anymore. They're all moving over to Superposition. There's even CryEngine benchmarks with ray tracing now. So I'll have a look around and I might just swap it out. Even though the issue is still present, it's consistent. So it means that that's just how the drivers run. And I'm not too fussed since I don't play older DirectX 11 titles anymore. Most titles are moving on to Vulkan and DirectX 12. So, not a huge deal. But, worth talking about anyway, seeing as there might be some people playing those older DirectX 11 titles that did notice the performance drop recently. If you have, go back to 21.5.2 and just test to see if your performance returns, because that is where Unigine Heaven was performing 30 FPS better. And you can also see the max is like way higher too. It was going up to 326, and now it only gets up to 232, 225. So, it could even be a way something else to do with SAM. Even though SAM can be disabled, it could be something to do in the driver level, the way that the caching works. Who knows? So, yeah, I'm rambling too much, and we'll move on to Superposition. So this is just 4K optimized, for anyone wondering. It's just a preset, so it's really easy for anyone to replicate. Alrighty, so let's see here. Superposition 68, so within a decimal. 57, 57 within a decimal, and I do keep my system very optimized, so it's like you can see it's the exact same stuff running in the tray, nothing fancy. Media player doesn't really make a difference, and yeah, you can see the consistency between the drivers. So going back to 21.6.2, even the max was within a decimal. So the drivers are very stable, as far as I can tell. We go back to 21.6.1, it's also within 1 FPS, basically. And then if we go back to 21.5, which is where we had the heaven drop, it's also within a decimal. So yeah, very, very good. It's what we want to see. And yeah, this is just to show you guys that there's no driver issues as far as stability goes. I will show my settings though at the end of the video. So just skip ahead if you do want to see that, just like what I run between every single driver update, because I install over the top. Unless I'm swapping my GPU for whatever reason, if you're running the same GPU, you've already done your display driver uninstaller since getting your new GPU, then between driver updates, I recommend actually just installing over the top. Don't do the factory reset and lose all your settings, because that'll actually cause problems, especially if there's a particular setting you disabled that actually helps your system to run properly, like to run stable without flickering or any kind of issue, and then that setting gets flicked back on. And I'm not going to name exactly which settings can cause it, but there are settings in the drivers that can cause flickering, particularly with the overlay and with, might as well just show you now, particularly with the in-game overlay here. And as you can see, I've disabled everything except for the system tray icon. And under, where is it, display, FreeSync can sometimes cause issues. You have to kind of investigate for yourself. My monitor does support FreeSync, but what I've done is I've disabled it in the OSD. And when you disable it in the monitor OSD, it actually comes up as unsupported. And that's just because I found FreeSync seems to be a common cause of like black screens. You launch a game, it'll be a black screen. Not all monitors, but sometimes it's just a monitor to driver compatibility issue. And it's not actually AMD's fault. It's just to do with compatibility. They've tried to support it on a broad range of monitors, and it just doesn't always work. So, that's one thing you can try if you're having black screen issues. And as you can see here, I keep anti-lag, chill, and boost off. And the only feature I use is Radeon image sharpening because it is really good. And maybe I'll use the color setting, which is also under display. You go to, where is it? Custom color, and you can turn that on, and you can do that on a per game basis if you go through the gaming tab. So if you want to have like your color, your contrast, something turned up for like seeing easier in the dark type of thing, I recommend just using it through the drivers because it can actually perform better than going through the game settings. If the game has like post-FX settings, you can actually get a similar result going through graphics. You could go into Escape from Tarkov, for example, and I could have my own custom color profile here instead of doing it through post-FX, because post-FX tend to hurt FPS a bit. So anyway, we'll continue with the testing. And yeah, you can see my GPU settings, my fan profile is fairly aggressive. I'm in a tropical country. So yeah, nothing too notable there. We'll just add these figures in. And this is just the vanilla Metro Exodus because I feel it's more accessible to the majority of people. If you look at the Steam hardware surveys, not everyone is on a 20 series or 30 series graphics card. And to be honest, rasterized can still look really good. And changing a rasterized based game that was developed with rasterized effects in mind completely changes the atmosphere and the look, not necessarily in a good artistic direction. That's just my opinion. When I look at it, it looks like the contrast got turned up in the RTX version. That's what the RTX natural, like realistic, accurate lighting makes scenes look like the contrast got turned way up. And it just doesn't look as good, in my opinion. But anyway, let's get into the testing. So yep, stable as usual. So we're apart from this weird heaven thing, everything just seems fine. Nothing to complain about. You can see here, minimum 54.42. You know, within margin of error basically. It's slightly higher, but you know, not something you'd put down to a necessary improvement. It's just margin of error testing. But again, it's stable though, like it's consistent. Even though I'm only doing one run on every driver update, it's been that consistent that we can look at previous tests and see the same, roughly the same performance, even back down to 21.5.2, 77, slightly up actually from 21.5.2. But margin of error, you know, 1 to 3 FPS type of thing. So we'll punch those in. Average. Back there, max. And we'll get on to the newer titles. Well, not really new. They're kind of old, but they're new in terms of the PC world, like games that are still relevant. Where is it? Lost my Ryzen 0 Dawn link. There is a bug, well, not really a bug, but a quirk with Horizon Zero Dawn, which is why I didn't want to use it all the time. But basically, this happens at the start of every launch. It'll pop up again. The optimizing shaders. It's not doing it now. But basically, it pops up, and if it wasn't allowed to complete as the menu, it'll cause stutter when you first load something. So, you know, if I run it again, you might see less stutter the second time around. I'm not sure if the optimization thing breaks, because it's supposed to do it dynamically as well, so it might just take a couple runs to get it working properly. But that stutter at the beginning of the benchmark is not normal, so yeah, it's just to do with this weird optimization thing on PC. Maybe a good reason to drop this and not use it for testing. Starters, I might just skip it altogether because it's to do with the optimizing shader thing, and I did reset the shaders on the driver update, but Horizon Zero Dawn itself has its own optimization that it does. Let's see. Yeah, there you go. So you can see second time around, it might stutter if we get back, like, past the point where I stopped it last time. But see how stable that is now? That's to do with the whole optimizing thing that I was talking about. So it's not the GPU driver, it's to do with Ryzen Zero Dawn's weird optimization, driver caching, like what Ryzen Zero Dawn does. Let's take a look. I get them both open at the same time. So we're looking at 87 average, 190 max, 46. So 87, 190. Yeah. How do I not remember that? Horizon Zero Dawn, 83, 41. That max is way higher. And I'm running the same settings, so I don't know. If could just be the way that sometimes the max can just be a discrepancy, because you'll get random FPS spikes. The way the game, like, the way whatever tool you're using to measure the FPS picks up those spikes, depending on its update rate, can sometimes get a spike in the maximums, like it does happen. But the actual score and the minimum and the average are what I would focus on, and they're pretty close, not too far apart. So 5 FPS, I wouldn't worry about it too much. And yeah, it's the same on the minimum. So, I mean, I don't think I changed any settings, no. But we'll see in the next driver update. So if we go to 21.7.2, for example, I'll run Horizon Zero Dawn one more time before I switch it over to like Shadow of the Tomb Raider or something, just to see if we get any changes in the performance. And if there's a game that you'd like to see me benchmark for these tests, then suggest it in the comments, because I'm open to use whatever game, you know, any suggestions really. And yeah, lastly we'll do AC Odyssey, because that's another hard to run title that tends to stutter a lot if there's any issues. So yeah, but this looks very stable. I mean, I'm not complaining. Let's soon optimizing shaders again. For a while. I have been loading lots of different games up, so I guess it's not cached anywhere. Looking at 66, 25, 103. And yeah, that's also within margin of error, I'd say. Like even on the minimums, I mean, anything can cause a slight dip. Possibly just loading it up for the first time. I haven't been playing it, and the other times I've been playing it previously before the benchmark run, so that would explain it. But I mean, looking at the average, it's actually up a little bit, and the max. So, you know, nothing to really complain about. And the more important thing is the stability. You know, the games aren't crashing, there's no black screens. I'm recording with ReLive, which also has a performance hit, so keep that in mind too. There's another like 5 to 10 FPS of performance on the table that's not even being shown here. but it's mainly just to show everyone. And you know, if you're wondering, can I upgrade to these drivers, and you're on a 6000 series card, I'd say it's fairly safe. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next driver update. Cheers.